Last week I made a 2-minute short. It's called Curious, link in description, check it out. It was a lot of fun to make, I enjoyed it and I liked the final product, so I'm gonna make another one. This is that. So another thing I really enjoyed with Curious was the behind the scenes building and creation of that final product. The only problem I had with that behind the scenes video is it was hard to cut because there was just a lot of footage from different places, which is why it wasn't as cohesive as I wanted it to be. So this time it's going to be a little bit of a bigger project and I'm going to split the whole process into 4 parts. First of all, the pre-production, so the outline, the story, the concept before I start shooting. Secondly, production. I'm going to talk very briefly about the gear that I'm using and basically just how I shot it. I'll go over any problems that I ran into during shooting and how I overcame and solved those problems. Lastly, post-production, which I'm going to split into 2 elements. Firstly, the actual Premiere Pro cutting, editing side of things, and any extra stuff in editing, like any graphics I used, and dealing with the time-lapse that I have planned into this shoot. And the second element of post-production is going to be all about sound design and how I did the Foley work and the decisions that I sort of made in terms of sound. Concept. So the inspiration for this concept came from a gift that I was given. Now I'm still not 100% sure how, but somehow my dad got hold of a Google Nest Mini. The damn thing doesn't work. I don't understand. We spent a long time trying to get it to connect to my iPhone, but that got me thinking. A few days later, I watched the video that I talk about in the Curious behind the scenes video, got inspired, and I made Curious the short film. Fast forward like 4 or 5 days, I'm here wanting to make another short film. I needed inspiration, that was where I got it from. I thought it would be cool to experiment with how I could use the virtual assistant kind of thing and just have it be the bedrock of the story that everything else sits on. So I kind of started to build the story in my head. So I put pen to paper and just started writing down some random notes, and then I hit a wall. I couldn't figure out. I had a beginning, I had an end, and I needed a middle to sort of bridge them two together. Having a beginning, middle, and end will always push your story further. It gives structure, it gives cohesion. That's key to telling your story. So I hit this brick wall and I thought, I'm tired of just writing random notes. So I walked around my house with my phone on voice memos and just talked at my phone for, I think the clip's about 15 minutes long. Here's a quick snapshot. Okay, something just hit. I don't know, maybe it says programming complete on the computer or just something along those lines. I wake up and I plug it in and I go, scripting. Because it's only me shooting, I don't tend to write scripts or do storyboards. I really don't think they're necessary. If I was working with other people and I needed to articulate my story, then a script or storyboard or both would then serve their purpose. But for this, I can already see the story. I know how I'm going to shoot it. A script and a storyboard would just be a formality. I don't want to waste the time. So now I have a story. There was a few different parts of the idea that I needed to flesh out and sort of understand, so I ran some tests. I did some tests with the time lapses, some motion graphics, made sure I knew about locations and where everything was going to be shot, and then did some camera blocking in those places just to sort of get an understanding of how I was going to go about actually filming this thing. Okay, so it's 1 PM right now and I need to be shooting like an hour ago. So I'm going to give a very quick rundown of the gear that I'm using and then we're just going to jump straight into setting up this first shot. Okay, so in terms of gear, Sony a6600 body. I've had this thing for a little over 3 months and I love it. Absolutely love this camera. Duragadget 14-inch bag. I will go through everything in this bag in a video, but this is just the stuff that I'm using for now. This is the setup that we're going to go with. So I have 2 lenses. I'm going to be using them both. The Sony 16-50, it's the kit lens that comes with most of their APS-C line. This is probably going to be the majority of the coverage right here. Secondly, this is the 50mm f1.8. I just got this today. The box is right there. Having that extra few stops of light on here is going to be super convenient, super useful. So that will be coming out at some point. This is my Synco M3 microphone. This is going to be recording into camera for most of it for reference sound, and then I'm going to record dialogue on location with this thing. This is the Vigim VL196 RGB, got a softbox, and the honeycomb. We have stuff charging here. This is my VR49, really great for just chucking on top of the camera to add like a key or just like an extra fill light or something. RGB again, so I can play around with those colors. This is my least favorite light of the one I have, just because it's not RGB. 120 LEDs, goes pretty bright, nice to chuck on top of the camera again to add that extra fill. That's basically it for gear. Everything has to be able to be set and then left alone, so there's no boom poles, there's no proper external audio recorder because I don't have people to operate those things. That's how it's gonna work, so let's go make a movie. We just knocked out the first shot. We had the video playing and we had just one single light because I wanted to sort of short side myself. We're going to try and run and gun this and knock out the next shot pretty quick. The line, if there were two people, the line is going to be across here, so we can't go past this point, but we can go here, which is what we want to do. Okay, this is scene 1, shot 1B, take 1. Alright, so I put up these whiteboards just to completely block, well, it's actually a canvas and a whiteboard, just to completely block that part of the table from sunlight, because we were getting like a lot of hot like rim light around here and it was screwing with the shot. So alright, I think we got it. The light from outside ended up going. There's no more sun now, which is good for us as long as it stays that way, which I guarantee it won't, but I can only dream. So I ended up just bouncing the other two lights off that board just to give like a very light wash, just so everything would be brighter without me having to like raise my ISO and get a bunch of grain and stuff, because the actual screen on my laptop isn't all that bright. It's fine, but obviously not for video, so that out of shot just gives like a little bit more illumination towards the lens, and then that just helped light the entire scene a little bit better. Probably could have got away with bouncing this one off there, which would have created a bit of a stronger light wash, and then taken either the 120 or the 49 and use that for the simulation key light, but I don't really think it matters. Looks fine. I think this is actually a better setup because I wanted a lighter wash of light, and my ISO is low enough anywhere where I'm not going to receive much grain, so should be all good. Let's tick it off the list. A couple of issues I ran into during production. First of all, just how fast I had to move. I knew that the deadline of Friday night, it was there before I even started shooting. In the planning phase, I knew it was going to have to be a relatively simple light shoot so that I could get it done in that time. So I had to move very quickly and still get enough coverage and, you know, nail every shot in a certain amount of time. So that was tough. Also had some issues with pickups. I'm really glad I started my first assembly cut the night of day 1, and I realized that some of the pacing was off, and so I scheduled in to do a couple of pickup shots on day 2 to then reinsert in that assembly cut from day 1. Apart from that, production went pretty smoothly. Everything went a lot more smoothly than I expected it to for a shoot that was a lot bigger, I think, in my head. Setting up for day 2, starting nice and early. Camera is currently charging. I did a rough sort of assembly cut, and I did some sound design. Today's objective is to knock out this time lapse. Yesterday, after doing an assembly cut, I'm very glad that I chose to start that early because there's 2 shots that I want to get. I'm going to get a couple of mid close-up shots of just some inserts of me like cutting the box open and sliding my laptop across the table, just to speed up that pacing just a little bit. I don't want to do too much because the pacing overall is going to be relatively slow. So we're going to need a lot of these. a lot of these. Confession, I screwed it up. Sort of, not really. So I go to do the time lapse in like S&Q mode, which I was talking about, did a test, looked great, and I flipped back to regular movie mode to change my exposure and check a couple things that you can only do in movie mode, hit record, and have spent literally the last 28 minutes doing what needs to be done in the time lapse, thinking that it was all going to be quick motion. I never switched back to S&Q mode, so I have about half an hour's worth of footage that's just regular speed. Camera's charging, giving everything a break, turning the lights off, giving those a break, leaving everything else as it is because I don't want any continuity errors. Side note, eating Cheetos and Dr. Pepper at like 10 o'clock in the morning is not something I enjoy, especially when I'm also drinking coffee at the same time for actual me, and then in-camera me is drinking Dr. Pepper. It's not the best thing. But I'm pretty confident that we got it, to be honest. I'm just going to talk about a couple of things that came with the last two stages of creating this film, the editing and the sound design. Sound design was tough. It was probably the toughest project I've done mixing custom sound for. I used the Synco M3, which I'm recording on right now, for the vast majority of the sound design, and then I used this desktop microphone that's just mounted on a boom arm for some of it as well. I did 3 sound passes, so I completed a rough cut in Premiere Pro, exported that into Audition, and the edit just sort of bounced between Premiere and Audition as I started to build and layer things up. Exported that back into Premiere, did a bunch more stuff, some graphics work, some color correction, put my cinematic crop on there, just some sort of adjustments and add-ons just to push that through, put my establishing shot in there, and then I needed sound for that as well. I literally just selected and got rid of all the original audio from the clips in Premiere, and then just dropped over my Audition export, and that was all the sound basically done, all the environmental practical sound. I did that all inside Premiere using Epidemic Sound. Epidemic Sound is a service that I pay for monthly. I think it's fantastic. I always struggled before to find good music that was worth using and that I had the rights to in YouTube videos and in short films. Pulling tracks from Epidemic Sound, you can make playlists straight in their website on your account. So I went through and probably spent maybe half an hour to 45 minutes going through and just selecting tracks and adding them to the playlist that I thought would fit in certain places. Added my establishing shot beforehand, before I went into all the sound design, put that at the very front because I didn't know if I was going to need it. I felt like it set the scene, I felt like it helped, so I used it and it's in there. So that's the film. That is Come Back, but the behind the scenes of how it was made. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you do want to check out the final cut, then click the link in the description, or just go search for it on my channel. It's called Come Back, and I might try and keep these behind the scenes videos a little bit shorter. But other than that, thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.